Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly, and in this episode I'm joined by Jason Hallacher. Jason and I met at the Virginia Fly Fishing and Wine Festival. He's an assistant fisheries biologist with Virginia's Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. In addition to talking about his connection to the outdoors, we discussed the department's efforts to educate hunters and anglers about all of their opportunities in the Commonwealth. Jason's particularly excited about the newly launched Trout Slam Challenge. Keep listening for all of the details. But before we head on to the interview, I just want to thank all of our listeners and everyone who's taken the time to share a review in iTunes. We really appreciate it. Again, folks, if you like the podcast, please share it with a friend and leave us a review. Thanks so much. Now, on to the interview. Well, Jason, welcome to the Articulate Fly.
Thanks, Marvin. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation, and we have a tradition on the Articulate Fly. I'll always ask all of my guests to share their earliest fishing memory.
Yeah, I had to think about this one a little bit. I've got a lot of good memories fishing as a kid, especially with my dad. But I grew up in Bethel, Pennsylvania, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere in eastern Pennsylvania. And my parents, owned kind of a small area of land out there, 20 to 25 acres. And so there was no one out there. So my best friend was the creek in the backyard. So I was always out there splashing around the creek and catching crayfish. But ironically enough, I lived just down the field from a trout farm. And so you'd think that my earliest memory would be fishing at that trout farm. And I do remember sometimes going down there and fishing there, but my most vivid memory was actually catching a bass out of a small pond called Lake Good. I was probably like 5 years old, and my dad took me up there to fish. I think we were allowed to fish there. He always said that he had permission from the scouts, but I never saw any scouts around. So we went up there and we went fishing, and we were just fishing for bluegill. I remember I had this tiny little like Zebco push button rod, and we cast out, a worm and catch some bluegill. And then, we caught a couple, and on like the fourth or fifth one, I remember just this pack of largemouth bass coming in after this bluegill. It totally blew my mind. I'd never seen a bass before, and I swear they looked like a pack of wolves coming in after this little bluegill. And so my dad said, we're gonna hook this bluegill and toss it back out there and see if we can catch those bass. And I, didn't argue. So we tossed it out there, and my 5-year-old brain swears that I saw those bass chasing that bluegill through the air, because when it hit the water, that bobber went under as soon as it hit. And, a short fight later, we brought in a bass that was probably as long as my forearm, which was giant to me, but it was probably 10 inches, let's be honest, because I was still tiny. But that memory has stuck in my brain to this day. And, that's what got me hooked right off the bat there.
Well, that's awesome. When did you move to the dark side of fly fishing?
It took a while, actually. I grew up fishing for stock trout. My dad was not a fly fisherman, and my grandparents were not really into it either. So I didn't really get introduced to it right off the bat. I spent a lot of time fishing in farm ponds for largemouth and bluegill. But my parents did get me a beginner's fly fishing book. I can't remember which one it was off the top of my head, but there was lots of pictures. I remember that much. And I got a scientific angler outfit and went fishing for largemouth and in those same ponds that I talked about earlier, and just used poppers and learned to cast and catch sunfish and bass off the surface. And so that's when I really started fly fishing. But I didn't really fish for trout until I came to Virginia years later. One of my interns who loved fishing for brook trout at Ramsey's Draft, his name was John Pancake. He's got a great last name. We used to call him Johnny Waffle. But he took me to Ramsey's Draft. And he said, he asked me if I fly fished. I said, no, I don't fly fish for trout. That's too hard. I just fly fish for bass. And he said, well, it's not that hard. You can catch a brook trout. And I said, all right, well, take me. So he took me out to Ramsey's Draft, and I remember fishing an Adams dry fly, and I remember seeing that first take off the surface, and I jerked that 4-inch brook trout right out of the water. I think I caught him in midair. So that was my first introduction to fly fishing, which was a lot later in life than most of your guests probably. But I get into a lot of different things, and so fly fishing is not my sole hobby, but I do like to get out there and fly fish when I can.
Yeah, that's great. Who are some folks that mentored you on your fly fishing journey?
Well, honestly, Steve Reeser, my boss, he taught me a lot about fly fishing. He's very good at fly fishing. Some of the guys at Mossy Creek Fly Shop, they're good friends of mine, Colby and Brian and Shane. Those guys are just phenomenal at fly fishing. And so a lot of times, if we fish together, I'll steal their gear and they tie the fly on and help me out. But as far as, just hunting and fishing in general, my parents were very influential in getting me out there and supporting those hobbies. My grandparents were very big into hiking and the outdoors, so much so that in the 80s they walked across the country. And so, I can still remember my grandmother allowing me to splash around in creeks, even in the middle of the winter. My boots frozen. And so the addiction to the outdoors and fishing and hunting is a long tradition in my life. So I'm very thankful for those mentors. I've had a lot.
Yeah, that's really neat. And I know professionally you studied fish and wildlife biology. When did that obsession start for you?
Early. Again, going back to living out in the country as a young kid, I was always in the woods, always in the creeks, and my parents just kind of allowed me to explore and catch critters and go fishing and hunting. And so I just, for as long as I can remember, I wanted to work with wildlife. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to work with animals. And so that was my goal all through, intermediate school, middle school, high school. And then when it came to picking a school, I ended up going to California University of Pennsylvania. I know it's a strange name, but it's out near Pittsburgh. And I studied, I got a bachelor's degree in biology, and I could have kind of gone either way. I studied both fish and wildlife in school. And so I just got as much experience as I could because I knew that I'd need a pretty diverse resume to get something full time. And so I've trapped deer, I've worked with federally endangered fox squirrels. But then I've also done a ton of fish work with, riparian restoration work and acid mine drainage work. So I just tried to get after every opportunity I could. And luckily it landed me down here with a full-time job with the department. So it was all worth it.
That's great. And how long have you been with the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries?
I've been with them for 15 years. I was really lucky and got a full-time gig right out of college pretty much. And so I've been down in Virginia since 2004, working out of the Verona office for 15 years. It's gone by very fast. And I'm an assistant fisheries biologist with them.
Gotcha. And to kind of help our listeners, what does that mean that you do for the department?
Well, I do a little bit of everything. I've got an incredible job, and I'm incredibly fortunate to have it. But my job is, in the most basic sense, is to assist the district biologist with managing our public resources. So our region is Region 4, which encompasses most of the northern area of Virginia. It's a very large region. We've got 2 offices that cover it, and my office is the Shenandoah Valley District. And so we cover from Winchester straight down the valley between the 2 mountain ranges down to Lexington. And then, of course, we do Bath and Highland County and Allegheny. So we've got a lot of ground to cover. And so every public lake, every public river, every public stream, we're in charge of those. We manage those. But I'm kind of a chameleon, and I like to do lots of different things. And so I'm just as comfortable working at a chronic waste and disease sampling station for white-tailed deer, or working in a cave with some of our bat biologists, or working on a fire line with our DGIF fire crew. So I just like to be involved in everything the agency has to offer, and I'm really passionate about outreach and do a ton of stuff with educational days and trying to teach people how to fish and stuff like that. So I get involved with a little bit of everything.
That's neat, and I know you also spend a fair amount of time doing electro shocking too.
Yes. Yeah, that is definitely probably 75% of what I do. So that's electrofishing is the main sampling technique we use to sample our fish populations. And so at any given time, we'll be out on a lake, river, or stream electrofishing to sample the fish populations.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I have to ask you this. How have you been able to use the information that you've gained electrofishing to help you with your personal angling?
Well, it's cheating, right? So you get to see where all the fish are. So it kind of spoils you, honestly, because, there are days when you go out fishing just for fun, recreationally, and the fish are there. You just shocked it, the year before or the month before, but they still won't bite. So unfortunately, I haven't figured out how to force them to bite the end of my line, but it's really helped in obviously, locating fish. They aren't that surprising when you go and shock fish. They're typically in the areas where you think they are. They're in the deeper pools or the deeper runs adjacent to rocky structure or large woody debris. There's no mystery there. But the one advantage that I've really found is time of year changes, as well as water clarity. For example, the Jackson River tailwaters, has an incredible rainbow trout and brown trout fishery. But the larger browns can be challenging for anglers to catch. And I remember raft shocking that for the first time, and knowing that those larger browns typically don't always show up in our sample when the water is clear. And we went out on a higher water day, and all those large browns were in the riffles. It was incredible. In areas where typically we were catching smaller rainbows and smaller browns, these 20 to 25-inch browns were out there feeding. So it's you get little tips like that really help you out on a personal level. But also, those tips are some that we can pass on to anglers, and so it's really helpful not just for me, but for the other anglers out there as well.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. And you had mentioned that you were really passionate about outreach. What are some of the best ways for folks in Virginia to find out about fishing and hunting opportunities in the state?
Bar none, the best way is our website. I've been on many websites around the country, just, kind of peeking in to see what other states are doing and how they kind of work things as far as online platforms. Our website just went through a revamp today, actually. It was just launched today, and it is stunning. The main page of our website looks like a National Geographic short. I mean, there's just incredible videography on there. It's incredibly attractive, easy to use, and I can't say enough about it. It's amazing. So the website's definitely one to check out. You also want to sign up for Notes from the Field, which is our subscription that we use to send out. It's a mailer that we send out to hunters and anglers in Virginia, and a lot of our up-to-date information gets sent out every Thursday in Notes from the Field, and it could be anything from an article on fishing for smallmouth in the winter to an update on our conservation police officer canines. It's all sorts of just incredibly diverse information about our agency. So it's a great way to learn more. And then, of course, our social media platforms. On Instagram, we're at Virginia Wildlife, and then at Facebook and YouTube, we're Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. And so a lot of our outreach materials go out to those platforms as well.
Well, that's really interesting. What kind of programs does the department have to attract new hunters and anglers?
So we offer all sorts of things. I'll just stick with the anglers because we do offer quite a few different things. The one thing that we've really been pushing the past few years as far as staff support is the free fishing weekend, which we have the first weekend in June. And so you don't need a license to go out and fish that weekend. And so it's a great opportunity to get anyone involved in fishing, not just young people, but any age, go out and fish. And we have a list of reservoirs that we have staff actually showing up with bait, with rods, with all the tackle you need to get you started and to help mentor you to try to catch your first fish. So it's a great program. We just started it last year as far as the staff actually coming out and assisting. And so it's really rewarding for us to go out and try to help catch you your first fish. And so you definitely want to check that out on the website. We stock tons of trout all over the state. And so that's a great way to get someone involved. They're typically not the pickiest fish to catch. And there's a lot of trout water that people can target. But some of the best waters to take kids fishing are the youth only stock trout waters, which is also a fairly new program where we have stretches of rivers or impoundments that only youth 15 and under can fish. That's it. So you don't have any licensed anglers coming in and snagging the fish for the kids, before the kids can get after it. So it's a new program that we're kind of piloting right now, and they seem to be fairly popular. We have kids fishing days that we partner with local certain localities. They'll sponsor them, and we'll come and stock and close down the stream the day before. And then one of my favorite is the pre-announced stockings. More and more, we're finding that people want to plan out their trips, to go fishing. And so with these pre-announced trout stockings, they're already on the calendar at the beginning of the year. And so you can grab your kids and plan a trip, and maybe add camping to the mix. And so those have been pretty popular as well. So lots of different stuff. We also have a tackle loaner program too. So if you need rods and reels and you're hosting an event for Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or a school event, we'll loan you rods, reels, and tackle for that event for free. It's a free loaner program. So all that's available on our website.
That's great. And, we met at the Virginia Fly Fishing and Wine Festival and started talking about this new outreach activity that you've come up with, the Virginia Trout Slam Challenge. And where did the idea to have a challenge for the state of Virginia come from?
It actually kind of goes back to electrofishing, actually. So we sample many, many trout streams during the summer as part of our cold water stream surveys that we do. And a majority of those streams are brook trout streams, but we do have numerous wild rainbow trout streams, wild brown trout streams. And, it's great fun, but, you get tired of seeing brook trout every day. And so sometimes when we catch all three species, we call it the trifecta, and we get really excited if we caught all three species on the one stream. And so the idea of catching multiple species in one day is not a brand new idea. Other states do this as well. I believe there's a cut slam out west. But we wanted to use this opportunity to celebrate some of our unique fisheries that we have in Virginia, and then just offer something new to anglers. So we came up with the Virginia Trout Slam Challenge, which challenges anglers to catch all three species, the brook, brown, and rainbow, in the same day. And so that was kind of the basis of it. And then we kind of came up with a marketing strategy and a logo. We got funding from Mass Nut and Trout Unlimited for the logo, and an excellent artist named Ron Shearer, who is local, designed it, and it's awesome. And we've made up a bunch of stickers for it for anglers that complete the slam.
Well, that's great. And how does an angler participate in the challenge?
Well, the challenge will begin February 28th, That's the official launch, and our website will launch that day, which has pre-planned trips. So we're not just going to say, go catch 3 fish, good luck. We've got some awesome streams that I think some anglers may have never fished before. So just the opportunity to get out on some new water will be great. And a lot of the trips we tried to, pair up streams because we don't often have one stream with all 3 species. And so you're allowed to stream hop or even lake hop if you need to. For example, down in Rockbridge, you can catch the rainbow and the brown in the Buffalo Creek special regulation area. And then you have to go to Strasburg Reservoir to get the brook trout. So you're even crossing over into different water bodies as well and water body types. So it's a unique challenge. And so once you complete the slam, which the size does not matter for this particular challenge, it's just the species itself. Once you complete the slam, you take a picture of each fish, and then you can use your Go Outdoors Virginia app or go on our website, and you can basically go into the licensing section of the website, and you add the Trout Slam to your cart, and there's a small handling fee, and then you submit your pictures and your form, and then we'll mail you that celebratory sticker so that you can brag to your friends that you completed the slam. And it's a nice thing for people to do. So I'm excited about it. It's going to be cool. People are excited about it.
Yeah, that's great. So it's going to launch at the end of February, and I don't live in Virginia anymore. I grew up there. What are the trout seasons in Virginia, so folks know how long they have to get out and make the challenge work for them?
That's the beauty of it. Trout season never ends. It's just all season long. Our stock season, which stock trout do count towards the slam as well. You can do wild or stocked. But our stock trout, season is October 1st through the end of May, and then we pretty much wrap up stocking at that point, and then June 15th is the last day. But then you can continue to fish throughout the summer for trout. So any time of year, a lot of our stock streams hold fish well into the early summer months, especially if it's a cooler summer or a wetter summer. So there are opportunities to continue to fish some of that public water. And then of course you can fish your wild trout as long as there's water in the streams. Our streams do tend to dry out a little bit, in August and September. And then the spawn starts for some of the species in the fall. So it can be a little tricky that time of year, but you can go after it whenever you want.
Got it. And I assume anywhere that there's trout in the water that you can legally access in the state of Virginia is open to the challenge?
That's right. Yeah, we have a great interactive map on our website that you can use to help kind of plot your trip. It has all the stocked and wild trout populations in Virginia. Not all of those sections are easily accessible, and there are some private lands that prohibit you from getting to every stream. But most people are pretty willing to allow anglers to fish on private land if you just act accordingly and ask permission and stuff like that. So there's lots of public water out there for people to target it.
Yeah, that's great. And do you have a URL that we can point folks to get more information about the challenge?
Sure. The easiest way to find it is just go to our website. There's a great search option at the very top of the website, and you just type in Virginia Trout Slam. It'll take you right to it. It's really easy.
Well, that's great. Well, before I let you go, why don't you share with us your favorite places to hunt and fish in the state of Virginia?
Sure. I got a couple. I love to fish in the Laurel Fork. It's a different world out there. Just unique habitats. It reminds me of almost like fishing in Maine, maybe. It's so far out there in Highland County, you really get away from it all. Probably more than anything else, I like to fish for muskie, and I love fishing on the James River. It's a gorgeous river. The Upper James is one of my favorite places to fish. And then for smallmouth bass, even though it's had its problems, with fish health issues. I love the Shenandoah River. It's our home river, and it's close to the house, so it's great to run out and fish the Shenandoah for smallmouth and muskie.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I love muskie fishing, and I usually come back every summer and fish for smallmouth in Virginia and get reacquainted with the heat.
Yeah, yes, it's definitely a little toasty up here at times. Yeah, for sure.
And it is not a dry heat, folks.
Nope, definitely not.
Well, are there any other things going on in the Virginia hunting and fishing scene that you want to share with our listeners?
Absolutely, yeah. We have a new membership program with our agency called the Restore the Wild membership, and it's on the main page of our website now as we speak, and it's really unique. You know, we as an agency, hunting and fishing license sales aren't going up. You know, there's less interest in hunting and fishing, and we're trying to rectify that the best way we can. But we're finding that a lot of people are very interested in conservation and don't know how much conservation that our agency really does. We're one of the largest landowners in the state, and we manage a lot of land and a lot of water. And so to help members of the public who don't necessarily hunt or fish feel like they have a voice and and can help our agency continue to conserve these unique habitats, we created this Restore the Wild membership, where you can lock in a yearly membership, and there's different levels. There's a hummingbird, bluebird, and golden eagle, and you can get trips to the wildlife management areas, calendars, wildlife magazine, and all that fun stuff. But the really cool part is that your dollars are going directly to conservation projects, literal habitat restoration projects on the ground. You're making a difference. And so that's a neat program that our agency has started. But bottom line is, if you really want to help our agency out, regardless of if you hunt or fish, buy a hunting or fishing license. That's the best bang for our buck as far as getting federal dollars as well as license dollars as well. So our agency does a lot of amazing things, and everyone can be a part of it.
Well, that's great. And I'll drop a link to Restore the Wild in the show notes. And before I let you go this evening, Jason, why don't you let folks know where they can find the department on the internet, and maybe how to reach you if they have a question about fishing in Virginia or hunting in Virginia, or more specifically about Region 4.
Sure. Our agency is at dgif.virginia.gov. That's our website. And then at Virginia Wildlife is our Instagram handle. And then Department of Game, Inland Fisheries on Facebook and on YouTube. And that's probably the best place to get updates as far as, you know, the videos that I do, and just updates in general from the department. We're going to be posting a lot of stuff about the Trout Slam coming up on Facebook, on Instagram, and on YouTube. And so there'll be a lot of stuff coming out there. If people have direct questions, they can email me at jason.hallacher@dgif.virginia.gov. It's a long one.
There you go. Well, I really appreciate you taking some time this evening to share the Trout Slam Challenge with me and our listeners, and I hope it's a great success.
Well, thanks for having me, Marvin. It's been fun, and I appreciate you help us get the word out about the Trout Slam. Thank you again.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Again, if you like the podcast, please share it with a friend and leave us a review in iTunes. Tight lines, everybody.